Hello, my name is Echo, just in case you're new here. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make some hand-painted watercolor Christmas cards. These designs are relatively simple, so hopefully they won't be too complicated for anyone. I'm also going to be showing you a couple more slightly complicated designs and how to make your own fancy envelopes, just in case you don't have any. It's not too late to get your Christmas cards mailed out, so now is a good time if you want to make them. It just adds like a nice homemade element and also makes them just a little bit cheaper. The materials you're going to need for this are relatively straightforward. First of all, a watercolor pad, preferably 9x6. I recommend a 9x6 sized pad because this is roughly the size of the card it will create when you fold it in half, and there's no trimming or cutting involved. You can work with a 9x12 if you already have that, just cut it in half and then you'll have 2 cards per page. This is also the size that I use to create my envelopes. And then of course the only other thing you really need is a watercolor palette and brush. Luckily, because Christmas colors are relatively limited, you don't need a very complex palette. There's a smaller version of this fan pan that you can get at Walmart and it would do perfectly fine. Part of the reason that I really love these fan pans is because they actually come with a watercolor paintbrush. These type of paintbrushes have a reservoir in the handle so you can fill it with water. That way you don't need a small cup of water to dip your brush back and forth between the paint. This is very useful. You're also going to want to go get some paper towels to clean your brush between colors. Some other tools that I recommend but that are not necessary are some rulers, some double-sided tape, a pen, pencil, and eraser. If you're making your own envelopes, you will need scissors, and some washi tape. Washi tape is essentially decorative masking tape. These look really good on your envelopes and they're also very useful for creating very crisp borders. But once again, if you have your own envelopes, if you're not looking to make this incredibly fancy, the only thing you really need is paper and paint and a brush. And you know, water. A really nice thing about these Christmas card designs is that once you get one that you're fairly comfortable with or that you really like, you can kind of just mass produce it and paint it over and over and then throw away the ugly ones. And no one will know. All of these materials, including the washi tape, can be purchased at Michael's, Hobby Lobby, Walmart, Target, anywhere that has a semi-decent art selection will have all of these materials. When I bought this, it was maybe $5, and that's 28 sheets, so that's up to 28 Christmas cards for like $4 versus $2 to $3 per card. This is a much more affordable route for Christmas cards. The very first thing you're going to need to do is start pulling out your paper and folding it in half. First, I'm going to start by showing you the fancy way to fold your cards. You can just fold them corner to corner and press the crease down if you want. This just makes the fold a little cleaner. Using the ruler, find the middle points on both long ends of the paper. Then, using the ruler as a straight edge, run a gift card or a coin down the center to crease the paper and fold. You can use your fingertips to press down on the fold, but after a while that'll start to hurt your fingers, so I recommend using the card or the ruler. Okay, let's move on to our first design. So part of the reason that I recommend using a pen and pencil is so that you can sketch your calligraphy greeting with the pencil first. That way, if you don't like it, you can just erase it and start over. Also, if you write over the pencil with an ink pen, you can then erase the pencil underneath, after the ink is dry, of course. But don't try to do that if you go over the pencil with watercolor because you'll just end up messing your paint up. Any pencil marks that are underneath your paint are just kind of there to stay. So now I'm going to bust out my 42 color fan pan and go straight to the reds. We're going to be making some pretty simple holly plants to frame our greeting. Go ahead and paint 3 dots as a center point of each holly. I'm just kind of putting them in the corners. And then from there, go to your green palette and using a bright earthy green, we're going to paint some layered V's. And go ahead and make them as long as you see fit. I ended up adding an extra one along the center bottom because it just kind of felt empty in that area. And then from there, we're going to make a simple Christmas tree. The easiest way to do this is by painting 3 stacked triangles that get slightly larger towards the bottom. I also used the leftover green on my brush to add some grass around the tree. Then you're going to want to paint a small star above the tree. You can also put some dots of color around to make little baubles and decorate your tree, but I'm going for something a little more natural, so we're just going to stick with a star. Using a medium brown, you can paint the trunk of the tree. I recommend making the base a little bit uneven so it looks a bit more like roots. Now, you can stop here or you can add more trees or paint your tree more in the center if you want, but I'm actually going to be adding a little buck on the right-hand side of the card. So if you want to follow along with that, we're going to start by making a line down the neck and back and then building out the chest and the head. Go ahead and add some little ears and then we're going to build out the thighs of the back leg. If you've never painted an animal before, here's a simple guide for animal legs. The bone structure is relatively similar to humans, so as silly as it looks, it does help to kind of picture it like this. And then using a slightly darker brown, I'm going to put a bunch of spots on the rump and add some antlers. You can also use the darker brown to dot the nose and feet if you want to add a little bit more detail. It still feels kind of empty, so I'm actually going to be adding a lot more grass in various shades of green. Next, I'm going to be making a simple happy holiday card. This is going to be more of a general seasonal greeting kind of card. If you just Google image search happy holiday, Merry Christmas calligraphy, you'll get lots of references for really great greeting text. We're going to make some simple snowflakes with a bright cyan blue. You can do this with 3 or 4 cross-section lines and then make an octagon or hexagon in the center, and then add some lines crossing the ends. I'm also going to be putting some dots between the lines just to make them look a little bit more full, and then after that we're going to make a little snowman in the corner. To make a snowman, paint 3 light blue curves, and then using the paint that's left on the brush, make some little snow puffs all along the ground. From there, we'll be using some black paint to add a little hat, some coal eyes, a smile, and some buttons. Then with a dark brown, you can make the little stick arms. The stick arms can be kind of random because it'll just make them look organic. And then finally, a little orange carrot nose. Now, you can stop here, but I'm actually going to add some pen lines to the light side of the snowman, as well as going over the greeting with a light blue paint. And then finally, I'm going to dot the eye in holiday with a little star. And that's it. For this next one, I'm going to be mixing sans serif text with calligraphy. Using a dark green, we're going to be making some string lights along the corner by painting curved lines with enough of a gap between them to paint a small square for the bulbs. Then I'm going to start by dabbing green into a circle to create a wreath. The nice thing about this is if the circle starts to look a little warped or too thick or thin on one side, you can just add more dabs of paint to even it out. Definitely use as many shades of green as you have access to for this because it'll make it look more organic. Now that I'm done with the greens, I can add some colored light bulbs to the string. I'm going to be using yellow, red, a yellow-green, and an orange. But really you can use whatever colors you have access to. They're your Christmas lights. Have fun. Now, let's paint a bow in the center of the wreath, starting with a red square. Then we're going to add the sides of the bow like this, and some ribbons at the base. Once again, I'm painting over the letters with red and green paint, and that's it. Another beautiful holiday card. This next one is going to be a little bit more complicated. First, we're going to paint a little gingerbread man. I did this by using a medium brown to create a circle and then building out the body from there. Gingerbread men don't usually have a neck, so leaving that out will help it look more like a gingerbread man. Try to think of it as a very thick stick figure. Now I'm going to be making a little gift box behind the cookie man. You might want to let him completely dry before adding more paint in direct contact, because otherwise the paint might bleed together. One of the secrets to good watercolor is to let your layers dry. The box itself is relatively simple. It's just 4 rectangles with space between them for a ribbon. You can make these any color, but I'm just going to be going with a classic red and green. The bow on top is just 2 lumpy heart shapes laying on their sides. For this card, I'm going to be painting the greeting instead of using a pen, just so you can see what it looks like. I also wrote this greeting in a sans serif text instead of an ornate calligraphy, so it should be a little bit easier to paint. I feel like the text looks a bit plain, so I'm also going to be adding some golden bells on either side. I am using my pen to add a face and buttons to our boy, but once he's dry, you can just do this with black paint. If you don't have washi tape, you can stop here, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how to spice up your designs with washi tape. First, I used the larger red tape to create 2 borders on the top and bottom, and the thinner tape to make angled stripes for peppermint sticks. This is a very simple way to create a sort of candy cane effect. You could very easily put this around the entire border of the card. I just feel like it frames it very nicely and just adds like a slight Christmassy feel. For this last card, I'm going to be keeping it very minimalistic and working mostly with washi tape. First, we're going to lay out some tape along the top and bottom so that we can make some red and green borders. Then we're going to sketch out a simple greeting in the center. Next, we're going to add some holly in 2 of the corners just to frame the greeting. This card is incredibly simple, it just uses red and green. This is something that's very good if you need something that's very quick, but also very clean looking. It's something that anyone can do, but you do need some kind of masking tape in order to do it. The last thing I'm going to show you how to do is how to make envelopes. So there's two main envelope styles. There's the classic baronial half letter pointed flap, and then there's also the square or straight flap. For these, I'm going to be making some straight flap envelopes out of 9x12 pages of watercolor paper. The first thing I did was to place a folded card perpendicular on the center of the page. Then I traced around it, leaving a little bit of extra space. You want to leave enough extra room so that your card can slide into the envelope, because if it's too small, you might end up needing to trim your card down. Using the ruler, extend the lines of the traced card to the edges of the paper. On the edges of the page, measure 1/2 inch inward from where the lines meet the outside of the paper. This is to angle the flaps. For the main straight flap, I measured the size of the center box as about 4.5 inches and decided to make the flap 2.5 inches thick. Before cutting the envelope out, I used the ruler and the gift card to crease the 4 sides of the envelope. Now, cut and fold. Once all the folds were creased, I used the double-sided tape on the smaller flaps to hold the envelope together. You can do this with glue or just regular tape if you need to. Once the card is inserted, you can use the decorative tape to seal the back kind of like a gift box, and it's ready to be addressed and mailed. And there we go, some relatively straightforward Christmas card designs. Hopefully this video was helpful. Please like this video if you like it and consider subscribing. Consider making cards with your friends or your kids or your friends' kids. I feel like handmade Christmas cards just have a little bit more heart in them, and I feel like people appreciate that a little more. Also, it's cheaper. Be sure to try and get your cards in the mail as soon as you can. Christmas mailing time is a mess. I think that's all I have for you today, so I'm gonna give you 100 awesome points for making it all the way to the end of this video. I hope that you have a lovely rest of your day and rest of your year, and hopefully I will see you later. Goodbye! No soda for you. Oh, hi, baby.